Welcome back to the virtual hangar. Today I'm going to show you a basic beaded daisy chain bracelet just in time for Mother's Day. Your kit will include 2 lobster claw findings, 2 extender chain links, 2 individual chain links, 1 beading needle, I believe it's a size 10, 1 string of super strong Nymo beading thread. It'll be wrapped around a little bobbin thing here for you. You will also get 3 colors of size 8 seed beads. Light purple, some in white, and then some in this kind of fancy frosted amethyst is I think what they're called. More likely they will all come together mixed in a bag. Before we get started, I found it a little bit easier to work with a towel on the table. These little seed beads will hit your table and then bounce and then go into space and you'll never find them again. So step 1, when we pour the beads out on the towel that we're working with, we're actually just going to separate them by color. You can not separate them. You may have a tougher time when it actually comes to beading, but I'm just going to make 3 little piles of each of the separate colors and then carefully scoot them onto a little piece of paper here so that I can pour them into sort of a shallow, anything you have that's like a little shallow bowl for each color that doesn't have like a hard square edge. So not like a mug, but something that's kind of rounded on the bottom. That will make it easier. I am using a little paint palette. If you have one of those, that's great. If not, like little salsa dishes would work. Any 3 separate things you have that are shallow and rounded on the bottom. So let's get beading. You were given this white thread. I am going to use this same exact thread but in blue so you can actually see what I'm doing. You're going to take one end off the bobbin and carefully unwind your thread and then thread your beading needle. Bring the needle to the thread and just leave about 6 inches of loose end off the end, just so the needle doesn't come unthreaded. So for findings, we have these lobster claws, the chain link, and the longer thing of chain. You can either just use the lobster claw or you can use all 3. I'm going to show you here how to attach the longer piece of link to the lobster. I was able to twist these with just my fingers. If that's tough for you, we have pliers here in the hangar. You can use any pliers you have at home, and I want to say we have a handful of jewelry making kits even in the Lots collection that you can borrow. So to start, I've got my lobster claw, I've got my chain. I am going to just thread the last link on the chain and start by making an overly complicated knot. This knot is called the non-slip mono knot. We are going to start by making a pretzel on the long end of the thread. So this is actually the part of the thread that doesn't have the needle on it. So we'll make a little pretzel here that's represented here by the red on this cotton cord. The needle end is going to be the blue. So there it is through our chain link. And then we are going to thread the needle through our pretzel, just like this, so it crosses over the long end of our thread. Now you can see here how many times it crosses. The more times it crosses, the better. In practice with the little skinny thread that you can barely see, this is very difficult. But if we were doing the knot correctly, like I'm doing with the giant cotton cord here, you would take your needle end and cross it over the long end of your thread 4 times, I believe is the complete knot. 1, 2, 3, 4, yes. And then we will take the needle end and go back through the pretzel, just like this. And then as we pull the needle end and pull the body of our rope here, and then we pull both ends, all of those crosses get caught in the knot up at the top and make a really, really strong, powerful extra wrap knot. And then you can trim very close to the knot. In a perfect world, you would scoot this very close to the end of the thread and very close to the chain itself. You have plenty of thread, so you don't need to worry about that. But once you've trimmed it, go ahead and re-thread the needle with the long end of the thread and we'll get started. Okay, I've done it on the tiny thread, and now let's get to beading. Before we start, the very first bead you do, it doesn't matter what color you start. I like to do it in a pattern, but you don't have to use mine. I do just take the first bead in the sequence no matter what, and I'm going to wrap it through the chain link and the bead twice. This just gives it a little extra stability in case the chain splits, and then you don't lose your whole bracelet. So we've got one bead on there. I take the needle and just kind of scoop into the rounded dish. I'm going to do 3 of the amethyst and 1 of the next color, so that I do have this total of 4. So I've got my first 5 beads on the string. I'm going to then take my needle and go back down through the first bead, the updated picture there, and then pull that all the way tight. I found it easier, especially for filming, to work down on the table on the towel. If that helps you, by all means, and if you prefer to hold it up in the air, that's fine too. So you can see how it kind of loops around, and then we are going to bring onto the needle the next 3 beads of the same original color we started with. So there we go. I finally got 3, and then I'm going to take the needle. See, there they are. 1, 2, 3. Great. I'm going to take the needle and go up through the last bead before the center of the flower, which is the one bead that's in a different color. And there we go. Pull it tight. And that is basically one daisy. There we are. I usually flip as I'm tightening and kind of scooting along. I will flip so that the bottom 4 right now and the top 3, I'll usually flip. I think it sort of the individual daisies fit together better with the 4 on top than the 3. But I guess if you looked at it from the different direction, it probably wouldn't matter. So anyways, you can see here, I do the next 2, and then I just continue on in that pattern. I take the 5, go back down. That does one side of the daisy, grab 3 more, and then finish on. That is one repeat of my pattern. You can go in any color order you like. I made sure that each kit had enough beads to do about 10 repeats of the pattern. In practice, that makes a bracelet that's quite long. See, that's 3 there, and it almost goes all the way around my wrist. So it's hard to say how many repeats you should do, especially if you're going to end up giving this away to somebody else. If you use the chain link, I would say do about 6, and that's definitely a safe bracelet that would fit anybody. But who's to say it needs to be a bracelet? It could be a keychain, it could be a necklace. It's totally up to you. So you can see as I continue, the sort of scooping method makes it a lot easier than like individually stringing beads. And if this is something that you find that you enjoy, they also have these very cool, like, spinny things that you just stick the needle in and you pull it kind of like a salad spinner and it puts the beads on the needle. And there's tons of other more complicated, cool patterns you can do with these seed beads and the needle. And we have tons of books on that in the collection. So, anyways, as I get to the end, I'm just going to give everything kind of a final scoot. You know how I always do everything with super tight tension. I ended up just finishing on the lobster claw. On my last one, I treat it almost like an additional bead. I wrap through it once with my needle and then through a bead again, just to wrap around the bead one more time because of course I'm paranoid that it'll break and I'll lose all the beading work I did. Pull the needle right on through, get it nice and wrapped. You can choose to do the chain link on this end as well. You would do it the same way that you started with. Instead of going through the lobster claw, you would go through the last link in the chain. You do want to use a lobster claw on both ends. That's how you attach it. But whatever finding you decide to use, I take the needle and wrap on the actual flower thread, so not around the last finding, in between the 2 beads nearest to the finding. I take my needle and go sort of towards the center, out to the outside, and that helps kind of keep it from slipping. And then I just take the needle and go around the finding here at the top and both the knots we just made, and just do a simple overhand knot. If you're brave, you can try another non-slip mono knot. I didn't really think it was necessary. Last step is to trim as close as you dare to the knot. Remember, the thread is quite strong, so it can be a little difficult to cut, but just keep trying or make sure your scissors are really sharp. And that is all there is to it. Here is our finished bracelet. I had a lot more fun doing this one than I expected to. I hope that you enjoy it. If you need help or tools, come see me in the hangar. Reach out to us on social media. I would love to see how yours turned out. You can totally send us pictures, and I will see you next time.